Hello and welcome, Star People. It's 8 p.m., your cosmic intrepid star guide and detective, and this is another episode of the Outlaw Astrology podcast. And today's topic, we will be discussing a major arcana deep dive with planets and signs. But before we get to that, some housekeeping. First and foremost, if you like my astro flow, please like and review the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify Podcasts so that others can find us as well. There is a free and paid newsletter, and the notes and info will be in the show notes. We can be found on Pinterest, Instagram, and also YouTube, and you'll find those also in the show notes. And if you want to support the podcast with a donation, you will find our tip jar link in the show notes as well. And with that being said, onward. Okay, so let's step into the planetary cards and those inner workings. So we're going to start with the 7 traditional planetary cards. There are 7 traditional planets in the Chaldean order. They go as follows, from slow to fast: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. And it goes all the way around the zodiacal wheel because each sign, let's start with Aries, has 3 decans of 10 degrees each, 0 to 9 degrees, 10 to 19 degrees, and 20 to 29 degrees. Each has a planetary association. In the case of Aries, it starts with Mars. So Mars would be the first decan. The second decan, what's the next sign that follows after Mars? That'd be the Sun. The Sun would be the affiliated energy, the affinity energy for the second decan, which would be from 10 degrees to 19 degrees. And the third decan has an astrological correspondence to the planet Venus. And that would be our third decan of 20 to 29 degrees, to give you an example. So that's how that system typically works, and this is how we are going to be very precise. This is how the 7 traditional planets are associated to the tarot, starting with the Magician. The Magician is Mercury, the High Priestess the Moon, the Empress Venus, the Tower is Mars, the Wheel of Fortune is Jupiter, the World is Saturn, and the Sun is the Sun. Okay, so they're very, very specific. Now, planetary energy manifests differently in tarot versus natal or any kind of astrology. So, Mercury as the Magician represents conscious will and manifestation, not just intellect or communication. Now, there are more than two different ways of seeing the mage, but we're not going to get into that just at the moment. It is definitely about conscious will and putting what you want to put out there in the world. Okay? So that's how that energy. Now, the second example that I could give would be the High Priestess and the Moon. Now, the Moon in astrology is about your natural temperament, how you nurture yourself in your essential self, that when you take away all the accoutrements of whether or not you like apples versus oranges, you get your natural temperament, and that's what the moon stands for in your gut instinct. That's what it stands for in astrology. When you have the moon card here, you don't just have how you nurture yourself, your temperament, you also have the intuitive, watery type energy, your gut instinct. And so, the High Priestess card and the Moon are about trusting that gut instinct. And if we're looking at the Tower and Mars, well, that Mars energy is assertion, it is aggression, it is using that conscious will to do what you want to do, and the Tower card is disruption. It's suggesting that you must do something. That it's not magically going to happen if you want to disrupt something, or if something breaks down, you don't have to look to a deity or some universal or cosmic force. You can simply look around and you will find a human hand in that breakdown, in that disruption. It suggests a powerful, fiery energy because the card literally shows flames and a lightning bolt on it hitting a tower. And so those associations give you the idea, the understanding that whilst there is some interplay, there is some enmeshment between the two associations and the two systems, when you transfer them to tarot, you make a few adjustments, as it were. Okay? And so those are some of the ways that you could look at a card. Now, if we're going to go further, let's do that. Let's go further. Zodiacal cards. Okay, so recall in the previous episode, there are 3 ways that the major arcana is assigned astrology. The first is via planets, the second is zodiacal, and the third is via elemental. Let's step into the zodiacal aspects, and that's 12, and their corresponding major arcana cards. So, as follows: the Emperor is Aries, the Hierophant Taurus, the Lovers Gemini, the Chariot Cancer, the Strength Leo, the Hermit Virgo, Justice is Libra, Death is Scorpio, Temperance is Sagittarius, the Devil is Capricorn, the Star is Aquarius, the Moon is Pisces, and you've seen we've gone all the way through 12 different signs. And so when we're looking at, say, picking up the High Priestess, it is usually the card shows a female presenting figure who kind of looks like she's dressed like a nun, or any of those statues of Mary that I used to see when I was in school, because I went to a Catholic convent type school, and Mary would always have a veil or dressing on her head long, and she would be dressed in blue and white, and sometimes you will see that for the High Priestess dressed in a similar style. Behind her is 2 pillars, one white, one black. Her foot is on the crescent moon underneath her foot, and sometimes you might see a bit of the scene behind, because there might be a veil behind her, meaning that she's the gatekeeper of hidden mysteries, the esoteric, the moon mysteries, the illusion mysteries, that sort of thing. That is what she stands for, meaning that the information there is not going to be easily gotten, that it's going to take time and patience. And since the moon is there, that's also gut instinct, but you can also consider it from a ceremonial magic perspective, that you're probably going to want to wait an entire moon cycle, which would be about 28 to 29.5 days, in order to be clear about the question being asked. So if there's like, how long will this take? An entire moon cycle would be wise to contemplate, ponder, and consider before making any judgments or decisions based on the information. And so we're looking at, starting with the Emperor, how does it reflect those qualities? So, for example, if we're looking at, as I said, the Emperor, we're looking at a older gent sitting on a throne with ram's heads on it, in a suit of armor with a cloak over his shoulder, looking very dignified and powerful. And that's that initiating energy of Aries. And when we look at the Hierophant, we're looking at a papal figure holding his version of a staff or a wand, and in front of him 2 people bowing. That is, and he's all in white, and that is, what is that energy? Taurus. Well, it's grounded energy, because the Hierophant card is about orthodoxy. It's about those orthodox systems, maybe religion, magical systems, esoteric systems, philosophies, etc., that are slow, deliberate, and grounding. The learning of them is slow and deliberate. There is a structure. You don't hurry. You take your time because you want to learn things correctly and understand them before moving on. So it is a structured system with a guide that you look to for advice and to have your questions answered. Whereas the Lovers, which is card number 6, because the Emperor's 4, remember, Hierophant 5, Lovers, the card 6, Gemini, you'll have 2 figures in a Garden of Eden with a burning bush and a bush with a snake, or tree with a snake, and an angel in the clouds overhead. And you might think the Lovers means love. Well, specifically, no, it's about making choices, making ethical and moral choices, hence the angel in the sky above. And Gemini is learning to use that, your conscious will, to use your mind, to use your consciousness in making ethical decisions and choices. And when we're looking at the Chariot, which corresponds to Cancer, the Chariot usually has a single figure, and sometimes it'll be 2 sphinxes, one black, one white, which reminds me of the High Priestess card, which has figures in it, a single figure with 2 pillars, one black, one white. This has 2 sphinxes, and there is a chariot and a charioteer in the chariot. And this is a card of will, consciously using your will, but also that's unconscious forces, meaning you have to work against yourself. Well, Cancer is learning to use your emotions, to be emotionally intelligent, and to know when to use your emotions, when to use logic, when to exert conscious will over unconscious forces. And the Strength card is Leo. And the Strength card usually has a female figure on it, and she's either gently opening the lion's mouth or gently closing it, depending on how you wish to see that card. And this is using compassion and gentleness over those parts of ourselves, the more bestial parts, the more feral parts of us. Instead of using brute force, we're using gentleness, meaning compassion, kindness, tenderness. And so Leo energy is learning to express authentically, but it's also learning to shine that light, to be playful, to express in playful, curious, more childlike, playful ways. And using that energy, you might consider being, gentle, like you would treating that lion that you see depicted on a card more as a child in need of care and gentleness rather than flaming fire. And so Leo is learning to use that inner child energy, which is represented by the lion, to be gentle to it, to treat it with kindness and curiosity, for example. And the Hermit card is Virgo. And the Hermit card depicts a single figure with a lantern, sometimes with a star inside of it, facing toward the left of the card. It's usually dark, and that is retreat, solitude. And Virgo energy needs solitude. It needs to be able to step back from a system, from a project, to be able to assess it in a way that allows it to refine out the impurities and keep what's necessary and needed. And so discernment thrives best in times of solitude, in times of stillness, in times of quiet, which is what the Hermit card represents. The Justice card is Libra, a single figure standing in front of 2 white pillars. The figure is blindfolded, holding a sword in one hand and scales in the other. The scales represent balance, fairness, equality, and the sword represents the mind, consciousness, and also decision-making. The blindfold on the figure can represent impartiality or denial, meaning that they don't see. And Libra is learning balance and equilibrium. It's learning how to exist in the world with other people whilst also being an individual. And that Justice card suggests impartiality, equilibrium, equality, but also you're going to have to make decisions. And some of those decisions are going to cut off. That's what the sword stands for, is to cut, because the word decision comes from a Latin word which means to cut. And so Libra is learning. Libra energy assigned to this card, according to the Golden Dawns, learning to wield that decision-making mechanism with intention, with compassion, with right relationship, because Libra is an air sign, and air is about thinking and thought. And so the ability to stand back and to assess, but also to make wise decisions when necessary. And death is number 13. So if I haven't said, let me catch up. The Chariot is 7, Strength is 8, the Hermit is 9, and Justice is 11. Death is the 13th card. Scorpio, well, I think it's kind of, Death card is basically depicts several figures. One is a skeletal figure on a white horse with a black flag in which there is a flower, a white flower on it. In front of it is a papal figure, a child, and a woman. The child is offering up a toy, the papal figure is offering power and whatever they can offer, and the woman is looking away as if this isn't happening type of energy. So basically it's saying that death comes for us all. Also on the card sometimes is what looks like a sunrise, implying that this is the beginning, this is the end, but it also implies a beginning. So it's a death and rebirth card, impermanence. And Scorpio is watery energy. And its modern-day ruler is Pluto, so it also has an association with death and transformation and rebirth, and it also has an association with the 8th house in astrology, because the 8th house, Scorpio is the 8th sign, hence the 8th house, and so that's all about death, rebirth, and transformation. This is how we get that, okay? Temperance is card 14, associated with Sagittarius. Sagittarius is usually, it's, a centaur-type energy, so it's two energies in one. It's a double-bodied sign, and when we look at this card, there's an angel standing with one foot on land, barefoot, 1 foot on land, 1 foot in water, holding two chalices of which water is flowing back and forth quite seamlessly and in defiance of gravity. And there is a rainbow in the picture as well, and that suggests alchemy. It suggests tempering one force with another. So too much earth, temper with water. Too much air, temper with water or fire. So it's suggesting alchemizing energies when there's too much of one energy and you want to temper it. So it's rather like offering an antidote to when you've taken something toxic, there's an antidote. This energy is very antidotal. And so Sagittarius is a big picture thinking energy and also a double-bodied sign. And so it is learning to temper the intuitive knowing of the body, the embodied knowledge, because Sagittarius energy is about experience. They learn best through experience. And temperance suggests that if you're going to be tempering things, it's going to take experience to get there. And Sagittarius is a very fiery, mutable, experience-oriented sign. So it means the knowledge cannot just be knowledge that lives in the head. It must be integrated knowledge that they can put under their feet. And so the Sagittarius association. Now the Devil card is number 15, and Capricorn is the associated sign. We've got mountain goat or the sea goat, and it is not unusual for animals in a lot of old pictures and iconography to be goat-like, because the goat was considered a satanic figure, probably based on the fact that Pan, the Greek god of all, which was all land and everything that you could lay your eyes on, had horns and a goat-like lower body. So this is how we arrived there. A tendency of Christianity to take pagan knowledge and make it part of their system, so thereby to attract people who were not naturally Christian, to make it easier, or to make it more attractive. And so the devil card depicts a devil sitting overhead with their hands in a gesture. It's actually Baphomet, not the devil. Most people don't understand that, but it's Baphomet, not the devil. Baphomet is a symbol of non-binary and unity. In front, two figures, chained, naked, and in varied states of confusion. And the card is about boundaries, vices, temptations, traditionally. And Capricorn energy is very much about rules, boundaries, edges, codifying systems and structures, and how those systems and structures can bind us, tempt us into believing in security, and bind us into, into oppressing ourselves and making us complicit in our own bondage. And so, the devil. Star card is number 17. That's Aquarius. And it features a star in the sky with a naked figure, female presenting, and pouring water into what looks like a river with a beautiful verdant field and all of that around. Sometimes it's a night scene, sometimes a day scene. And Aquarius is actually called the water bearer because the time of year in the northern hemisphere is usually when it's raining. In a few different countries in the northern hemisphere, it tends to bring early spring rain, which will make our fields far more fertile so that we can plant in the spring. Also, it brings flowers and animals to the scene. So, the star card and Aquarius, the water bearer, or how does that stand? Well, the water bearer is, as I've said, is bringing it's equality, it's humanitarianism. And I'm going to be honest with you. This card doesn't always make sense to me according to the Golden Dawn. It's like this how that just, I think it just magically happened that way, and then everybody's like, oh, I can totally see it. But basically, the association is that this figure is the water bearer that you see depicted, because you're going to see Aquarius sometimes as a vessel in which water is pouring out, which allows some people to believe that Aquarius is a water sign. So the star card and the Aquarius and what's on the card, water bearer, star, with a figure bearing water and pouring it out like you see sometimes Aquarius depicted, and this is how we get to Aquarius and the star. Now the moon, Pisces. Well, the moon is confusing in this. It sometimes stands for turmoil, confusion, what is hidden, what is secret. I mean, is that a rock or is that a tiger? Is the wind blowing because it's just the wind, or is there some feral predator moving the high grass, the tall grass that I can't see through? See, that's the moon. Everything is ambiguous. You can't tell. It's not clear enough for you to understand what's going on. And so Pisces is very hard to pin down energy. Most people, when they try to interpret, and I have the same challenge, because it's enigmatic energy, it's hard to pin down. It is non-linear thought, non-linear understanding. It is gut instincts and intuition. And intuition usually exists only in the moment. You cannot go back and re-intuit a situation. So the reason why we look at Pisces and Moon, we're looking at non-linear ways of knowing things. And those non-linear ways do not pass empirical or scientific study, meaning that we're not going to know linearly through, okay, I have a hypothesis and I follow this hypothesis here and I did this and I did that. Now everybody else, I codified the system. Now everybody else can follow and understand what I'm saying. The moon card is not like that. It is ambiguous. It is non-linear. It is your gut. It is intuitive. It exists only in the moment. It is knowing things without a linear way of knowing, meaning I can't look around and know this for certain. I know this is true, but I know it in my heart. I know it in my soul. I didn't have something happen physically in the world that I could point to and say, yay, that's the thing right there. Okay? And lastly, we've got the Sun card. And the Sun card is the sun. And it makes sense. The sun is life-giving, life-affirming. It is clear. Some people also give it positivity and success as keywords. How do the two line up? Illuminating, clear, clarity, consciousness. And that's what the sun card stands for. And the sun is core self, meaning a core part of yourself, your consciousness, your conscious will, and how that is going to be expressed in the world. Okay, so that is how it typically looks. So through the signs. So if we're going to go back and look at Leo and strength, that's mastery over primal forces, which requires heart-centered power and courage. Now, I have a problem with the word mastery, and that's going to be a story for another day. But yes, heart-centered power is very much a Leo energy, and it's also the sun. And so when you're looking at the sun card, you're also looking at heart-centered. You're looking at the authentic as well. You know, what's clear? What can you see? What's the truth, for example? And so understanding these connections can allow people to read the cards and to use time readings seasonally and to interpret transits through tarot. So let's say that it's the spring equinox and the moon is in Leo. I mean, let's just pretend that could happen. Let's just say it. And let's say, I want to run a ceremonial magic, an astral magic thing. How would I time this? Let's do that again. I want to initiate conscious will in the world. And I want to time the reading seasonally. And it's a new beginning, so I've chosen Aries season, because that would be in Northern Hemisphere when the spring equinox is. Great time to start new things. What card would correspond to that? Well, there's two. The first would be the Emperor card. And the Emperor card is about creating systems and structures and creating independence. So that's independent will going out there in the world and creating a system and a structure for which to make this, whatever the new thing is, whatever the magic new thing we're trying to create is, which is why we chose an Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, to start that new thing. The Emperor is about that initiating power. However, we could also use the Tower card, Mars. Why? Because affinity with Aries. And the Tower card is about disruption. Okay, what structure are we going to have to raise, meaning destroy, in order to build this new thing? Because there is no such thing as a new thing that doesn't require the death of an old thing. So rebirth, yes. New chapter, yes. But that means we have to close the book. Read the last chapter of the last book, close that book in order to move on to this new chapter, which means that Tower card is talking about Mars energy. How are we going to use our will to raise, destroy, disrupt something that's already in existence in order to create this new thing? Okay, so that's one way. And one way of timing it is spring equinox, Aries energy, and those two cards to help guide and help interpret. Now, there are elemental trump cards. So let's talk about the Fool, air, the Hanged One, water, and Judgment, fire. You'll notice, like I said, those are all elements. Now, these cards operate as archetypal forces that are beyond planetary, personal planetary meanings or zodiacal influences. And so they are more primordial elements and spiritual principles. And so this can add another layer to the major arcana. So the Fool is the start of it. You got an idea. And that idea requires, and the Fool, by the way, shows a figure with usually a knapsack attached to a branch with a white dog, and they're up in what looks like the hills, the mountains, and they're about to walk off a cliff. And that speaks to either foolhardiness or faith, because they're taking a leap of faith based on an idea. That's air. Air is about ideas, conscious will. And if we're looking at the Hanged One, that's water energy. And water energy is very flowy. And the Hanged One depicts a figure hanging upside down from a tree with one leg that makes them behind them or in front of them. Usually it's behind them, and it looks like they are a letter 4 hanging upside down. And that is an alternative view. It is also suspension, surrender, etc. And we got water. We got also an alternative perspective. The water's very flowy, and you can't grab onto it. So suggests if you're going to have alternative views and alternative ideas, it's best to hold them lightly, like you do water, because you can't hold water hard. You can't hold water firmly, because what's going to happen if you do that? Nothing. It's just going to drip right out of your hands. So it's saying that anything should be, any alternative perspectives should be held, or any delays or suspensions or anything like that should be held lightly. And Judgment is fire. And fire, well, it's fiery. But the Judgment card depicts an angel overhead with a trumpet, suggesting a calling, and 3 people, male, female, and child, rising from graves in states of naked, and rising up with their arms held out to the angel as if answering the call. And fire, well, first of all, the Empyrean, which is the highest heaven that in Christian folklore and myth, the deity that God is based on, that deity lives in the Empyrean, which is a fiery place. Very warm, very hot, etc. Very fiery, very dry energy. And so fire is creativity. It is inspiration. It is upliftment. And the Judgment card is a second chance. It's a redemption card. It's like, okay, yes, something is gone, something died, something that could be you is gone. But there is a second chance to redeem yourself, to redeem those parts. And it requires inspiration. It requires upliftment. It requires creativity, which are very fiery qualities in Tarot. Okay? And so that adds another layer, to it, to make everything very rich cosmologically. Okay, so I think this is a good stopping point, because that's a lot to think about and ponder. So the key takeaway here is that each major arcana card embodies a specific astrological energy, be it planetary, zodiacal, or elemental, and it allows for more of a multi-layered interpretation. Now, call if you choose to answer it. Choose your sun, moon, and rising signs corresponding major arcana card, and feel free to journal about how the symbolism reflects your experience of that placement. And next episode in the series is coming, and we're going to explore the minor arcana and the decans and how to read tarot with astrological timing. And so thank you very much, star people, for tuning in. Appreciate you. And once again, you can find the Outlaw Astrology on Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. You will find those links in the show notes. And thank you once again for listening. Appreciate you. Peace and astro magic.